Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 82. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of their profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has subscribed to the show, who has liked, shared, and commented. Your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. Also want to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment provides first-class weight rooms and has earned an exceptional reputation of providing the finest quality, design, and customer service. Being a direct manufacturer, the team at Samson brings full customization capabilities and not only branding, but in custom equipment needed to execute your next project. From racks, barbells and plates, to dumbbells, benches, flooring, storage, and much more, Samson equipment is durable and made to order from premium grade materials, all built from scratch, start to finish. Samson equipment provides professional weight room solutions for all your strength and conditioning needs. See the Samson standard for yourself and learn more at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to use promo code STRENGTH_game at checkout to receive 10% off your next order at cerberusstrength.com. In this week's episode, I am joined by Kyle Casillas. Kyle is the lead strength and conditioning specialist at Sanford Sports in Grand Forks, North Dakota. He has served in this capacity since the summer of 2021 after a brief stint as a performance coach with Future. Casillas spent 9 years in the United States Marine Corps, finishing off his last contract as an Infantry Platoon Sergeant. During that time, he was able to intern with the University of Hawaii's Strength and Conditioning Department from 2015 to 2016 before serving in a self-employed coaching role and later working in the hospital and health settings as a human performance specialist at Altru Health System, powered by EXOS, in 2019 to 2021. He has worked in other capacities involved in the military, such as a purchasing agent for Defense Logistics Agency and Joint Base Pearl Harbor from 2018 to 2019, but now finds himself full-time invested in strength and conditioning. Casillas continues to train and has channeled and utilized his military experience and his passion for weightlifting into the athletes he works with on a daily basis. And he is an avid lifter, a military dependent, and a father of 3 daughters that keep him very busy. I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Kyle Casillas. What's going on, everybody? Today, I'm excited. I'm joined by Coach Kyle Casillas. How's it going today?
Pretty good. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great, man. I know we were talking a little bit beforehand. It's really cool to see our different career progressions because I feel like we're kind of two passing ships. You're getting out of military, or you've been out for a while, but you've been coaching now for a long time too. And I'm on the other end, coaching for a bit, now getting into the military. So it's awesome to see how those two careers have lined up. So I'm excited to have you on and share some stuff today, but really want to get into what the meat of the show is too. How did you really get involved in strength training, performance training? Like, what do you currently do now to stay active, and what's your kind of progression been like in the strength world?
Yeah, well, for me, the military got me into strength training. I played football, did track, wasn't a big lifter through high school, small, undersized. As I progressed through the military, not even in my first 4 years, I mean, I was a skinny, fast runner, sub 18-minute 3-miler. And then probably about 5 years in, I got into lifting. So my final 4 years in the Marine Corps is where I kind of got into lifting and more just strength training, a little bit of aesthetic bodybuilding style training, being your typical gym bro, being in the military. And then from there, when I got out, I got into personal training and had a few athletes. And that's kind of where I kind of crossed that bridge of running into what I wanted to do and kind of finding that that's what I want to do. It's not what I'm doing. and I don't know what to do that yet. So I kind of had to do some research of like, well, if I want to work at a higher level, I want to do this, where do I go? And that kind of led me to where I'm at now and making those decisions to go back to school after the military. And but as for me now, I lift, I like to squat, I like to deadlift, I like to bench press, I like to do it all. I like to lift, I like to stay strong. I think it's fun. I think it's something that also when I'm in the weight room with the guys and training, I can jump in and be right there, and they're like, "Oh, okay, the old guy still got it." So it's been fun, and I just enjoy being strong. For my kids, I mean, I lift at home. My wife works out, and the biggest thing is our kids see us work out, and what do? They like to work out. So it's just setting that example for not just my kids, but also the athletes that I train now and currently. So yeah.
I love it. That's awesome. Yeah, we'll touch on it a little bit later too, because it's one thing to go into the military for as long as you did. I know you served for what, 9 years in the Marine Corps.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and then after that, like you found that you had a passion for coaching. You liked like the actual side of physical training, and to go back to school at 33, that's a big feat too in itself. But I wanted to touch on what you were talking about, like getting into the Marine Corps. Like it is, I mean, military in general is a lot of like endurance based stuff. There's a lot of bodybuilding, that guys like to just basically do the exact opposite that they're forced to do at morning PT. How did that kind of evolution work out for you? Was there someone that like sparked it? Was it just complete boredom, or like what kind of got you peaked like 5 years into it that really like wanted you to be more involved physically?
So it was kind of weird because you go on deployments. Like we deployed in 04, 05, come back, and I was skinny. I was like a 150, 160 pound kid, at 5'10. And I came back. I can tell after I came back, it wasn't the same person, but we'd get right into a workup again. So it's like, well, we're back. Cool, get a few months off, did nothing. And then we went right back to training, and you're in the field 5 days a week, come out of the field. And we weren't PTing as much in that 6 month workup, getting ready for our next deployment. And so I started to realize, like, man, I'm not really an 18-minute 3 miler anymore. It's just like, okay, you start putting on a little weight. I'm like 175 now, and like, oh, I'm kind of filling out. And then did another deployment, came back, and then I went to the schoolhouse to be a combat instructor, and just was kind of like at a point looking in the mirror, like, man, I'm not fat, but I'm definitely not lean and as I was, and it's just one of those things where somebody kind of said something to me one day, and I was like, can't be that guy. I'm not that guy, am I? And it was one of those things where it's like the switch went off. I was like, well, I need to start training, kind of looking up things and working out, and then got in better shape. And then I had a first sergeant one day that goes, Casillas, you need to you need to put some muscle on. He's like, you're way too skinny now. And I was like, oh, okay. So what do? We start working out, start going with him and a few other guys, and it just kind of snowballed into something I started doing religiously and with everybody, our whole platoon getting ready for Afghanistan in 2010. When we were prepping for that, my entire platoon was like, we wouldn't go for long runs. We'd go to the gym and work out. And we were one of the few platoons that was like weightlifting consistently. Like we'd run to the gym and run back to the barracks, but like we're lifting. And so we just had a bunch of meatheads, and it was fun. And that's where I kind of got that taste of like the iron and like, oh, like, okay, yeah, like, hey, we can actually lift heavy and do things, and kind of got the bug for lifting. So that's what kind of sparked that for me. It was kind of just that turn of being that fast guy to realize that I'm kind of an average Joe all of a sudden, just because of our workups. And you kind of lose with the rotations the way they were going, you kind of lose that time for self-care and all that. And you come back on the weekends, and what do? We'd go out, drink all weekend, and then come back and go to train. So that's just what you did in the military. And uh, for me, it was just that spark of somebody kind of pointing it out to me. And then once we got into it, I just never kind of stopped.
Yeah, sometimes that's all it takes. You might not even realize it until it's someone else like pointing it out. It's usually someone you respect, or it's someone you don't want to hear it come from. And then that kind of that lights the fire under your ass, and then you're going. But that's cool to see where it kind of took off from there. Did you notice anything maybe as you were exiting like the Marine Corps, like after your stint? Did anything change, like what you were doing like physically? Because maybe you weren't running as much as you needed to. You don't have to work up for another deployment. Like, did that change your training cycle, or were you able to like try something different, or were you even dealing with like some injuries and stuff at that point too?
No, I've been very fortunate. I mean, 39 years old, I've never had a serious injury that's really held me back from anything. Um, no, I think early on, I was playing with like the 5-3-1 and the basics, the most simple things you can do in the weight room. I wasn't experimenting with anything fancy of systems or programming. Like running, I still wasn't running a lot. I just decided that I liked the weight room and I didn't like to run. Um, but I relatively stayed healthy. I had healthy knees, I have healthy hips. The back, sore back from rucking and different things like that. Yeah, I still get that, but things I can work around, I can stretch. I know now it's like opposite. I self-care. I know I need to prep and I need to get myself moving before I lift. I need to get warmed up. So that's the one thing I think later on that I learned I need to warm up. Something I didn't do well while I was in, even while I was in. I was telling people to do it. I wasn't doing it. So I think that was like the big thing. But as far as changes in my systems or what I was doing, no, I wasn't. I wasn't smart enough then to realize what I needed to do, and I was still kind of bro lifting a lot of volume, a lot of heavy volume, trying to just kind of put size on, and trying to live in the always bulking. And sometimes I still say I'm doing that, but
Hey, it beats running any day. Now that I have to get back into running, like I, I'm I miss the weight room so much more, and I appreciate it now when I get to go in there. And then I still resent having to like hit the road for a little bit. But no, I know what that feels like. And the goal is to now at like this age try to stay healthy, like actually starting that off. But no, that's great though that you were able to stay healthy. And now that you're like you went back to school and everything, you were able to learn a little bit more about the things that you were passionate about. I know you did personal training, you worked in like the hospital setting. I know you were down with Coach Tommy too at Hawaii for a bit. How was that experience?
yeah, no, Tommy and the University of Hawaii staff. So I was under Coach Beamer, Gary Beamer, who is currently graduating med school as an orthopedic surgeon, but he was the football strength coach. Tommy
Okay.
was our head coordinator for all of strength and conditioning, and Tommy's awesome. Um, just it's a different environment. The Hawaii's weight room is a very different one than I would say probably any other program. Just the Tommy really sets the tone as far as that laid back but hard work attitude of just like you're on Hawaii time, but you're on time and you're going to work. So it's just kind of like you'll have reggae bumping in the weight room. It's a different beast, but probably one of that was probably like the highlight for me of my like early career and really got me a taste of strength and conditioning and perform like real performance training. And um that was, man, that environment of just being in that team setting with the football program and the strength coaches that were there. The guys are awesome. And I always look back to that as like that's an experience I'll never forget. And I'm
Yeah, so
super thankful that I had that opportunity.
no, it's a great opportunity. It's probably one that you can still use some of those lessons even with who you're working with now. Like because can you touch on a little bit that you've worked in the hospital setting? I know you're at Sanford Health right now. Who primarily are you working with? Mostly high school, or is it a little bit of everything?
Right. So working with Sanford Health now, Sanford Power, transitioning into Sanford Sports. But yeah, so our base is athletes. So we work with middle school, high school. We do team agreements with local teams. Whether like I know Far or not Fargo, Sioux Falls does some of the professional like indoor teams, like indoor football league guys. some minor league baseball teams, G League teams. But where I'm at, it's mostly middle school, high school, team agreements, and then we also do an adult training as well. So strength and conditioning classes for adults. And so any given day, I can be working with three very different populations, as well as doing personal training on top of that. So it's every day is kind of like you walk in and you're going to get a mixed bag of training that you do. The group of coaches we have are awesome, and we'll sit down and depending on what it is, we'll work together to program out for things. So it's a team effort and really kind of listening to everybody's ideas and what you want to do. And it's cool to get different perspectives because we all come from different backgrounds.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know the staff, but I'm sure that no one probably has the same unique background that you have and bring to the table.
No, but everybody has their. I don't think like mine's very different, very unique as well. But I think everybody has their niche and where they came from. I mean, we got a former track athlete, got a former college football player slash worked with Boyles for a long time. You got an Olympic athlete, Olympic gold medalist on our staff. That it's just one of those things where it's like you got people from such a diverse background, and you're looking at people with different experiences that have worked up with different coaches, and to get all these different ideas and things that you just haven't. And like my boss, Anthony Miranda, is one of the guys that I really in the last 4 years have enjoyed working with, and I was fortunate to get on with him at EXOS with another hospital system when I moved here, and then we came over to Sanford together. But he just another guy that taught me a lot, and I've taken the last few years and just I feel like as a coach I've grown so much more because of him. And so I always look at like the people that I've gotten to work for and work around, and just to be a sponge around these people because you're learning so much from everybody. And I had an officer in the Marine Corps that always told me, "Hey, every day is a school day." So every day I walk in, it's like I want to take something from everybody. Every day I want to soak something up and I want to learn something. So it's been great, and I've just been super blessed because I walk into work every day excited. Like I don't dread going to work ever. So super blessed for that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's great to have a staff that's a lot more unique than I gave them credit after you explained all that too. No, that's way better than having like kind of the same generic people around you or being in an echo chamber where you're hearing the same ideas. And it's great to have other people that are fired up and excited to coach and bring something unique to the table. Because if every day, like you said, you're able to learn something, then it's just that much more exciting to be a part of it, and it's that much more impact that you can actually have with your athletes, which is cool. Was there like as you were getting going, like personal training in the very beginning, was there ever a point up until now that really just kind of like clicked and it was just like I kind of made the right decision in what I wanted to do, or as soon as you were getting out and you were getting into the strength coach realm, you kind of knew ahead of time that this is either way, I'm gonna fulfill this?
I think it wasn't when I got out because I started personal training and my route was in strength and conditioning. I really didn't have a full grasp on that yet. It was when I had some athletes, and then that kind of sparked interest into like, well, how do I work with like the collegiate or professional? Like, what's that route? Like, what do I have to do to get there? Um, and when I did that, I was like, okay, cool. So I went back to school. I was at a community college in San Diego, and I was on a pipeline to go to San Diego State. And then I got to work with the football team there and got to help out in the weight room, got to help out on the field a little bit with some of it. And I was like, okay, like getting my feels for it, like being in the coaching environment, like a real kind of get your feet wet and kind of like, okay, like I think I could do this. Like I think my experience from the military, working with such a diverse population in the military, really helped shape me as a coach in person with people because I can relate to different people because I've worked with so many different types of people. And so when I went to Hawaii, I think that was the clicking point of being able to like walk into a weight room. I was an intern, but the head coach threw me in basically because we're short staffed in Hawaii anyways, that is the football strength coach, and then you have the GAs helping out with football, but they're also helping out doing their own teams. And so Beamer looked at me. He's like, "Hey, you're older. You were in the military. I respect you for what you've done. I'm going to give you the opportunity to you're going to be my secondhand man." And I got to get thrown into the fire of coaching and kind of get the respect from the guys right away. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, I can do this. And that's where it kind of clicked of like, I think this is it for me. That was my Hawaii, I think, was that where the light bulb went off. And I'm like, I'm going to pursue this. The big question for me is like what we talked about. My wife is active duty military. So trying to find where I go is controlled by her for the meantime and trying to make those things still align. But that was the clicking point for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one way you got to negotiate kind of following around. I've been the one dragging someone else around with me, so she's kind of had the short end of that stick, following me for different coaching adventures across the country. But I'll probably have to follow her for her military stuff too at one point. But no, it's cool where you're still able to find. There's always going to be athletes in every single area, and it's cool that you settled in a good place and you've been able to work with such a variety of people too. And I know you get the kids involved, and the wife is training with you too, so that's awesome to have it be part of like the whole family's kind of thing now too.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, I mean, I have my 11-year-old daughter. She's going to be 12 soon. She's in our middle school group at my work, and her and like 8 of her friends from her school are in it, and they love it. And it's just one of those things where they train 3 days a week and they come in and get exposed to it. But to watch my kids get excited over it and to ask like, hey, like we had a snow day the other day. We had 14 inches of snow, but we have a home gym. And she's like, "Can I get a workout in?" I'm like I can't go to train today, so can I get? Yeah, let's go. Write something up for her, take her through it, and it's fun. It's nice to see them kind of get motivated to want to do that, and that you're setting the right example for them.
Yeah, and it's great to see, because I think social media and like all those weird TV shows that I do not watch, but whatever, like those small little football kid shows where parents are going insane. It's cool to see that they're so excited and they're the ones coming up to you and asking for more to get involved versus like a high energetic like coach who's just force feeding their kids to do something. And I think it's going to pay dividends. I'm not giving any unsolicited parenting advice, but I think it's just awesome to watch because I've seen how bad it is from the other side. Even in college with overbearing parents is unreal. So no, I think that's awesome to see them get so stoked about it and come bother you on a snow day when they could have done anything else.
Yeah, I think she finally realized like, oh, dad might actually know something. Before it's like you try to I used to try to like poke the bear a little bit and be like, hey, like, want to go work out? They're like, no. It's like, but then we'd be working out and they'd come in and be like, well, we want to do something. It's like, okay, cool. So I kind of stopped poking the bear and kind of let them just kind of find their way. But now, like, she'll let me go in there and coach her up, and she's not embarrassed by it. She's like, doesn't try to fight me with it. And she just, okay, does it. And it's like, all right, we got this.
There you go.
So it's been fun.
That's awesome. Hey, I wanted to ask too, when were you at San Diego State or like with the football guys?
Okay, so no, I was at San Diego Mesa College, a community
Okay.
JUCO, and there was a pipeline, like all the community colleges there. If you go through the pipeline, you basically you'll get right into San Diego State. So that
Okay.
was my goal, was to go there. Like that's where I
Okay.
wanted to go. But one of the guys I was coaching at Hawaii or at San Diego Mesa ended up going to Hawaii, and he was a Navy guy. And when he was there, he hit me up and he's like, "Hey man, like we're coming out to play San Diego State. You should meet the strength coach, like see if you can get an internship here." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, like that's gonna happen. Like I want to just get up and move to Hawaii, And it's just and so he sent me the coach's information. I emailed him and kind of sent him my resume and just kind of talked it up with him a little bit. And he called me, interviewed me, and then 2 weeks later they were practicing actually at our school for their game against San Diego State. So I got to go out there and meet him in person, and he's like, "Hey, man, fly, get in, let me know when you're coming, and we'll get you rolling." And that's how my internship happened. And I think it was 2 months after that, I was on my way to Hawaii.
That's awesome. No, you got to take that initiative. I was wondering too, because I was at San Diego State for the summer of 2014, so we were almost
Okay.
there at the same time.
Yeah. So, because I left December of 2014 for Hawaii.
Okay,
So
close.
January 2015, I would have been at San Diego State, but I went to Hawaii.
I gotcha. Hey, well, you made a good decision, I think, and it's all worked out. It's got you to this point you're at right now, which is awesome. So I wanted to touch on this too, because we talked about it before we started rolling, and I thought this was super interesting too, because obviously, like getting into it a little bit more, I've been surrounded with the military and everything. You have like firsthand experience, and now on the back end of your career in the military, like you're coaching. What in your experience, like what was like a quote unquote like strength coach look like in the Marine Corps, or how was like some of that PT kind of done that's not, or that's kind of constructed from someone that has a little bit more education? Because I know you touched on it a little bit, how they're working with their program. But how is that done right now, or at least from your experience? And then where do you kind of wish it would go if you had a chance to kind of go back and like put your stamp on it as a coach?
Yeah, I think so. When I was in, we really never had anything like that. Like there was nothing, no guidance other than by example of your leaders before you. Like, hey, we get up at 5 a.m., we go for a run, do some push-ups, do some pull-ups. You might stop at the gym for an hour, but later on, and I want to say, well, I was at the school also, like 2007 to 2010. That's when CrossFit kind of started, getting into it. So we started sending guys to like get their CrossFit certification, and they'd come back, and that was like the early days of CrossFit. So we'd come back, and guys would come back and have us doing like Tabatas and different things, and that's where like that started shifting a little bit, and then that kind of disappeared. I would say, I think like 2011, I kind of didn't really hear of anything of that anymore, and it just kind of settled. But since I've been out, I know they partner with NSCA. They have a force fitness instructor. They send Marines out to go learn basically to be a personal trainer and get an idea of how to do a warm up, how to lift, how to program workouts, how that's being implemented in the units individually. I'm not sure how that's actually playing out for them because I just don't have any experience or knowledge on that to speak of. But I know from people that I've seen that became fitness instructors that went on were more like bodybuilders and competing in bodybuilding. So I don't know how much of what they're taking and blending and what they're doing with it to see how that plays out. But I think it's hard when I think of like how would I do it if I was the military and trying to program something. It's hard because every unit's so different. Like the Army's so big, the Marine Corps is smaller, but like in an infantry unit, it's like wartime, you have limited time to get that in. So how do you mix in if you're in the field Monday through Friday? What do you have in the field to train? How much time do you have to allot to that? You know, so I guess it would be getting coaches out there, kind of like the H2F program for the Army, to have people available to do that. Because I don't think you can have like an annual training plan. I mean, I think you'd be able to have like a soft plan, but you'd be mixing in some micro dosing while they're in the field, mixing in little things like that to kind of, how do I maximize getting something in while they're in the field or in a workup? Because in a 6 month workup in 2005 to 2006, we were Monday through Friday in the field. So we'd get there Monday morning to the armory at 4:30, draw weapons, head out to the field, come out 5 p.m. Friday, and then get cut loose. And it's like Saturday, Sunday, go out, party, come back, repeat. How do you mix in strength and conditioning? And that it's just like it's so hard, I think, in wartime, whereas like non-wartime, you have time, you can program, you can get guys on a schedule. They're going to have their trainings that they're going to have to go to. So I think the H2F program probably has something. I'm not too familiar with it, but I think having coaches available would probably be that picture. And then how do you get the buy-in from the unit leaders to push that? Because I know that's the big problem is some unit leaders are all about it, some aren't with the H2F program. So it's kind of the buy-in and getting that. But I think they're in the right realm, especially with the big military, because it's so fluctuating depending on who you're with and what time of the year you're with them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the buy-in piece is huge too. Even I mean, where you're working now, where I work in the college setting, and I mean, even like when I just got back from like officer candidate school, like the buy-in from the different companies is completely different. Like we were the only company in the battalion that didn't have like one of the Beaver Fit boxes that has all the equipment in it. So while the other ones are going out to do PT while lifting, we have like 20-pound kettlebells and 10-pound med balls, and we're just running laps for no reason. I was like, well, this is not what I want to do at all. But no, you're right. Like wartime scenario versus getting ready for deployment and a workup or coming back from one, being in the field, like different MOSs, like just different duties. It's so difficult. I don't know if there's really like a clear cut answer, and like we talked about it too. Like some of the it's different from branch to branch. It's different for different MOSs. It's different like what time of the season it's going to be. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but do you think that because I don't know if it works real well to have someone that is I think it's great to have people that are more educated that are like kind of like you talked about the force fitness instructors where someone in the platoon or company knows a little bit more, but you could still have the same problem where they're just like I like bodybuilding, I like powerlifting, like they're going to put their own bias on it. But
Right.
I still think that's slightly better than having a contracted person that has no idea what they're doing in the field and they've been gone for 3 weeks and then they come back and they're like, well, we're going to lift to my own biases and I don't really know what you guys have been doing. So we're going to do this for 2 weeks before you go out in the field again. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's hard. I think it's hard to get by and it takes a lot. If you're not, I would say if you're a strength coach going out into the military setting to be a tactical strength coach, there is definitely a bridge you got to gap of that like respect of getting their buy-in from them because that's a different group, right? They're doing different things and depending on what units, I mean, especially like I can only imagine working in like an SF unit and trying to get buy-in from those guys that are already in really good shape doing their things. And you're coming in and they're like, well, have you done a 20-mile hike? Like, just like you rucked with, it's like things like that. And it's one of those, but I think I would hope that those guys are getting the opportunity to get out with those guys into the field to see what they're doing. I think that if they aren't doing that, if they're just sitting back on the base and not trying to get out with the guys in the units when they're doing their training, you have a problem. Like you need to get out there, you need to see it at least. Because I agree, it helps. Like especially like somebody like you now that's in a unit that spent a decade as a strength coach. You know what you're talking about. You've been places. Now you're in the military, so it's like guys are going to look to you in your unit when you get to there. Are going to be like, "Oh, cool, all right." Like you trained what? It's like, oh, okay. The buy-in's a lot easier. Um, the guys will get excited over that. But going to a unit and if you don't know what it's like, if you don't know what it's like to go for a ruck, if you don't know what it's like to be on a training op and coming back and you're tired and you're exhausted, and if you're not going to program for those guys coming back and kind of maybe auto regulate their programs for them and let them go off of how they're feeling, you know, you may struggle to get in there. But I think if as long as you're on the ground really trying to get in, you'll be just fine. I think anybody can be successful in there as long as you get a taste of it. But the contract world, I think, it's just so you just don't know when a contract's going to end. when the military is going to decide we don't have the budget for that. So is it better to have it be a GS or a in military MOS or extra MOS duty, kind of like the force fitness instructor, probably is the better like overall is probably, as far as money wise, the bigger and better picture for it.
Yeah,
But you're going to lack the experience that you would with somebody that's been out.
right. It's hard to find the blend. I think that's I hope it starts to get to the point where there's more opportunities, like either on the back end or the front end, kind of like what you and I are doing. We're just doing it different ways, where there's more people that are educated that are actually involved in the military. Like the contracted positions are great, but like you said, if you're working with an SF unit, if you're working with a unit where like maybe that company commander does not let you into the field, or your contract doesn't allow you to go into those areas, or even like get an opportunity to like get in the trenches and see what that's like, because that is great advice. You might just be limited in the ability to do it, and you can do it outside of it, but you're not going to get the same experience and like see what the guys are doing day in, day out. Because anybody can go for a ruck and be like, all right, well, I've rucked before. I was like, well, have you rucked after being like sleeping on the ground and like being in the field for the first few days, and then doing all these classes out in the field and sucking down terrible juice and MREs all day? Like, it's I get it, but at the same time, like, you're not going to fully understand it. So at some point in time, I feel like they need to mix more of these together and educate people while they're in. And they're slowly trying to do it, but you're right. It's the Army's too big. The Marine Corps is very selective of how they want to do it. I the Navy, talking to my girlfriend, they're in their own boat too. The Air Force is very different too. So
I
who
mean,
knows?
the Air Force just increased their body fat
I know.
standards for like recruits coming in. They're like, oh, we're gonna give you some more leeway. So
Just
yeah,
opening up the net.
yeah, just I don't know. It's really difficult, and I think now more than ever, like just this. I sit here and I struggle because I'm like, okay, we just got through COVID. All right, it's like COVID's gone through, and what was one of the bigger groups of people that got affected by it were obese people, and here we are. Like as a military, you want to be healthier. They talk about being mission ready. It's all about readiness. Well, why aren't we being just making things stricter to be more fit as a whole, right? Like I want my guys to be healthier. I want them to be more fit because the best ability is to be available, right? Like you want availability for your guys and to be ready. So why is this so hard for the military currently to just push and find something to do it? But here we are.
Yeah, we're on the outside kind of hoping that some of these decisions people will come to their senses, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll do what we can where we're at. But this is a question I have for you too. Knowing like being in a platoon sergeant position, like as a Marine, and then like being in charge of a coach in charge of athletes, like there's a lot of similarities between like that mentorship role, that leadership role. What would you say like makes a successful coach? And then also what would you say makes like a successful Marine or platoon sergeant? And are they pretty much like there's a lot of similarities between the two, or is there anything that stands
Right.
out that's a difference between them?
I would say they're identical. Identical. It's the biggest thing you can do is get to know your athletes, get to know your Marines or soldiers or whatever it is. I think the more you can know the people that you're training or have your subordinates or whatever it is, it's like the more you know them and get to know them and build those relationships, that's what it comes down to. I think once you build a relationship with somebody, the buy-in's so easy after that. For me, I think the biggest thing is as a leader in the military, it was be firm but fair. it was always like try to be as firm as you can, but be as fair as possible. I was always kind of a more laid back, like I was a staff sergeant, I was a little more laid back, but at the same time, my platoons always worked for me. I never had to go out of my way. Always had really good NCOs under me that, sorry, my dog's whining. Had really, really good NCOs that led the way and set the standard for me. And going into strength and conditioning and being a coach, I think it's the same thing. With my athletes, I get to know them. I on the floor, I'm talking with them, getting to know them. I find what getting to know them and buying that, you're getting that in. It's like, okay, well, Johnny over here doesn't do well if I'm riding him hard. Like I need to pull off a little bit and kind of approach him a little differently. But Susie over here likes to get after. She wants to be like, yo, tell me what's up. And it's like, okay, cool. I can drive the needle a little differently with her. But you have to know the personalities. And I think it's identical. I think it's in almost any setting that you're in. It's all about relationships and building them. And if you can do that, you're going to be successful in anything you do.
No, that's awesome. I think that's great advice. It's refreshing to hear too that they're both pretty similar. It's you're in the same position, you're in a leadership position, and you're dealing with similar type of people that want coaching, they want to be better, like they want to be successful at what they're doing no matter what it is. Like it's great to hear like how you have approached that, and you're still able to take all those lessons that you've learned in the military and scale it to what you're doing now, like as a coach. Was there anything like super big? Obviously personal training is a little bit different. I'm assuming you were probably working one-on-one with clients in the very beginning, like not so much team settings. Is that right?
Yeah, one-on-one, you're a middle-aged adult, and that's where I realized that wasn't for me.
Yeah, you picked the right way. I remember I got like I was working in the very beginning, like in the summers coming back from school or maybe high school. And I think it was high school. And I was working at like a big box gym and helping like reset the weights and just kind of hide on the floor and watching all the personal trainers. I saw them, I like their work ethic was awesome. Like I did my personal training license and everything, and I was like certified, and I was going to start doing that. And I saw what they did and what they were making, and they were some of them were on their phones and just working one-on-one. I was like, this is awful. And then I'm so glad I like stumbled into like athletic like performance and team coaching. So it's a good thing you found that too, because I think that's way more fitting for your personality and like your skill set as well. But as you were transitioning out and you started getting into more of the team setting or even just coaching, was there anything that really kind of surprised you? I know like you were sparked and you were excited to do it. Was there anything that even from your education, going back to school, was there anything that like you felt maybe behind the eight ball with, or maybe less prepared that you kind of wish you'd brushed up on, or you had to brush on a lot more before you got like better at the position?
I think for me, like school-wise, I struggled a little bit just because I had such a gap, over a decade of a gap between school, and I didn't do well in high school, so that's why the military was there for me. And so going back to school, having to teach myself how to study and things like that, that was a gap I had to fill. But as far as coaching and getting, you know, I think getting my feet wet and thrown into the fire right away was a great opportunity that really kind of sped things up. But I think slowing things down after that to work on the details and it'll be a little bit more detailed on what I do and not rush through the things. That was something I had to, you get so excited and you get ahead of yourself and you start trying to do things that you're like, oh yeah, yeah. And it's like you gotta stop, take a step back and go, let's work on the simple things. Go back to the basics, go back to the fundamentals and be a little bit more detailed with those. And I think earlier in my year or earlier in my career, I was pushing things. I was trying to drive the needle, I was trying to do things. And it was something in there after that kind of to like sit back, and now I try to sit back and catch myself more and go, am I pushing it? Do I need to do that? Or can we spend some more time here, especially with youth athletes, right? So like we'll use the LTAT as our baseline for how we train our athletes. We'll use that and kind of as our guideline for, we just introduced a youth conditioning class. this year. It was the first time we've done it, and it's 2 days a week, and it's a 45-minute class, and it's active play. Trying to like, hey, because people are trying to push these like 8, 7, 6 year olds into our middle school group, and you're like, you squeeze a few that are like really athletic and really like mature for their age into that middle school group, and you're like, all of a sudden the gap between abilities and what you're doing changes because of that. And it was one of those things for us as a like, hey, we've got a youth conditioning group, let's let them play like obstacle course stuff and have them run around. And I know we pull a lot from like Jeremy Frisch and like what he does, and it's like, oh, like, okay. And then now you can have a true middle school group that's training to their ability, learning movement patterns with still a little bit of active play, and it prepares them for that high school group when they're ready for that.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. I've seen it at tons of levels. I've seen it like academy levels too. I don't know if the same coaching staff's there, but when I went to like visit Philadelphia Union, like their academy for the MLS team, their soccer players, which are, I think they're going to be high school for the most part, middle school, high school, around that age, they have to do like gymnastics routines, and part of like it's a graded class where they have to learn how to like break, they have to learn how to somersault, and it's not structured. They get the whole floor to like kind of create what they want to do, and then they have like springboards and everything. I thought that was like, this is awesome. And like to your point, the same thing. It's like they have so much time to actually develop, and this is the best time for them to like build a foundation. There's no reason to just rush to the end at all. And it's cool to see, because I think long-term athletic development, like I see the back end of what can happen for some athletes if they specialize too soon, or I could see how many of the same similar injuries they get because I'm like, oh, you've only been playing like basketball all your life, huh? They're like, yeah. I was like, we can kind of tell. It's like, you haven't played anything else, huh? So that's cool. But I want to touch on that stuff a little bit more. But in your experience, have you had to like kind of sit some of these coach or these parents back, and or have you had to like actually kind of take an approach like maybe Sanford Health and Sports like as a whole, or with your coaching staff there, to kind of educate the parents? Or has that ever like become like an issue?
We've definitely sat down with parents, and like, you get the parent that's, especially we live in a hockey community, so hockey's a big thing, and um, the kids are very excited about it, but the parents are very excited as well. So they'll try to like, oh, my kid's ready for that group, and it's like, is he though? I know he's a great hockey player. He's really good and athletic on the ice, but maybe he's not ready in the weight room for what you want him to do. Or it's like, oh, can we do like some hockey specific things? Your kid's 12, man. That's not where he's at. Just your kid doesn't have a baseline. And we've had those honest conversations with parents, and it's hard to do sometimes because parents are protective and don't want to hear that. But we've done it. We've also gone to places and uh, presented on the LTAD to hockey parents and other parents about, hey, this is how we train. This is why we train this way. This is what your kids will be doing while we're sorry, my daughter's at the door. But this is where it's like, hey, this is why we're training at this level and doing these things before we get to here. I know you want them here, but they're not there yet. And this is the research that shows why we're doing this. And you usually get a pretty good understanding. They'll be like, oh, wow, okay, there's a reason for it. So with that, I think that helps. Being armed with a little bit of research and a little bit of, experience as well kind of does a lot with the parents. But yeah,
No, that's
we've had
cool.
those.
No, I can only imagine. Yeah, they're probably pretty protective. And it's interesting too, because like I end up on my side having to explain the why we're doing something to like college athletes, because they've been doing some stuff a certain way, or they've been at home with their own trainer, or they talk to their friends back in high school that are at different universities, and they're talking about what they're doing, or they see pro guys too, because they're still another level beyond it. So if we want to talk long-term athlete development, like there's, I mean, for my lacrosse guys, there's professional, there's like national team level. You can continue to play for a while after this in box lacrosse, like in indoor, or you can play like regular field too. So it continues past this level. We're not the end stage for it, but it's interesting because I have to explain the why. I can't imagine with most of your athletes right now, you're really explaining the why like to the same depth that I am, but you probably have to explain that to the parents. You have to scale it a little bit differently. How do you kind of like speak in a different tone when you talk to like the younger kids when they kind of ask questions about like, hey, why are we doing somersaults, or why are we doing like these back rolls, or these movements? Like what is this? Doesn't help me with hockey.
It's actually easier to talk to the kids about it and scaling it down because they're usually pretty receptive to it if you tell them, but you just kind of point out the things that they're doing and what they do in their sport. And just kind of put the comparisons like this is going to give you the strength to do this or the power to do this. And they're like, oh, okay. Like, and they just kind of like they're the kids are just so much, especially the high school kids and the middle school kids, just so much more receptive to it. Like, okay, like this is why we're doing this. Like, all right. And they get it. The parents are the ones that will usually, I think, give you a little bit more of like, you got to come armed, got to be prepared, to kind of come back because they're going to have questions. And then you get the parent that played a sport in college. And then, they know strength and conditioning because they played a sport in college. And that was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So you're just kind of like, okay, and let them talk. And then you try to give them like, hey, I get it. You're coming from the right place, but then you try to steer them in that using like the LTAD is like, that's what we really arm ourselves with, is using that LTAD model to push like chronological, biological age. And like, hey, this is where your kid's at. We do a screening of the kids. We're going to look at them, and you kind of take them and you take them where they're at. And if they're in that group, maybe they don't do the same exercises. And that's the biggest thing is for us is kind of finding those lateral changes in exercises for kids in groups. Like not every kid's going to front squat. Not every kid's going to back squat. Not every kid's going to bench press. Not every kid's going to do like when we're in the program, like I think my high school group right now, I have 18 kids in the morning at 6 a.m. I got a kid with an ACL recovery. So her program's different. Matches and has her doing things along with them, but not the same things based off of where she's at. Had a kid that's post ankle surgery. You have a kid that coming out of basketball season that is a bigger kid. He's a thrower, but basketball really takes a toll on his back. So you get all these different kids with different injuries and necks, and you're like, okay, well, you're not going to do this. You're not going to do that. We're going to take your program. This is what I'm doing for you. Hey, you're doing this, this, and this. You're going to be with the group. That way you're a part of it and you get to feel part of it and you're going to work and you get pushed. But at the same time, we're going to scale things differently to where you're at. We're fortunate that we also have physical therapists in our building and we work hand in hand. So our athletes will see our physical therapist and then come back to us. So like our ACL surgery, she started with PT, jumped into the groups, progressed into that. And now that's where we're bridging that. She meets twice a week with the PT. She's in our group 4 days a week. And you're like, oh, this is a really cool opportunity to do something that you're not going to see in many places. And we have such good relationships with our physical therapists in our building that there's no competing heads. We do education with each other. And it's just a cool world to kind of live in a small little bubble of what we do.
Yeah, that's great too. Like to be able to bridge the gap between that and have both you guys basically in-house working with each other. Because then there's nothing lost in translation. You guys having full transparency with what their return to play, what their rehab process looks like. I mean, there's a lot of colleges out there that don't even have that ability, or even they do have it, but they don't have such a good working relationship with each other. And it's really the athletes and the kids that suffer. if that's not really clicking together. So that's cool to see, and it's cool to see that all the variability that you have, but you still keep it a team atmosphere. That's I've had countless conversations with people, and that's the big thing that athletes we talk about is trying to make sure that they're already injured, they already feel like down in the dumps, like they're going through different grieving stages of that, to take them away from their support, to take them away from their team or that group that they're training with, their friends, like that's just exacerbating that injury, and the injury is almost to the least problem like concerning for them. So that's awesome to kind of see how you work them together in there. When it comes to like, have you had this issue? I don't want to harp on the parents too much, but have you seen this issue too with like parents that are like, well, they're doing this, like why isn't my kid doing that? And like that defensive kind of side of it too, like, oh well, he's doing this, or like or even like them pulling like social media and like professional stuff out, or the colleges. I know like North Dakota's down the road too, they're going to games and they're like, well, I saw that they're training this way, why can't we do this? Maybe not sports specific wise, but something maybe someone a little bit more advanced to? Or is this again where you just pull out the LTAD and kind of explain it to them that it's
To be
not
honest,
there?
we really don't get too many people comparing or making comparisons with what other people are doing. Um, and usually the parents are more impressed that when we explain to them why a kid's not doing something versus doing something like, oh, why isn't my kid squatting that way? Like, why is my kid not squatting with a barbell and, the other kids are? And it's like, well, your kid's not ready to squat with a barbell. He's going to get there. But here's the thing, like when he's moving, his movement pattern's not great. And you just kind of explain to them what's happening and where his weaknesses are. And we're going to build those up before we put him under a bar. Like, and they're like, oh, okay. I'm like, could I throw him under a bar right now? Yeah, I probably could. Is it going to look great? No. Is it going to be better for him to do that? No. And parents are actually, I don't think I've really seen an issue with parents being like, oh, why isn't my kid doing that? And they'll ask maybe, but never have they ever tried to argue that they should be doing something like, oh, they do it at home. Well, they shouldn't be. It's like, but overall, they've actually been really receptive to it.
That's great to hear. Maybe I'm just tainted because I've seen it happen so much in my experience, but that's great. I think you guys are doing a great job then if you're able to have those conversations with the parents, the athletes are bought in, and even a parent that maybe is concerned or just kind of inquisitive about what's going on, and you're able to answer them in a good way and like fulfill what they're trying to ask, and they're like, all right, you're the expert, basically is what it comes down to, and they're listening to you and they're putting full trust in you. So I think you guys are doing a great job if that's the case, and that's awesome to hear. I wanted to leave you with this one too, because there might be some people getting out of the military, maybe unsure of like what kind of position they or what they want to do, what direction they want to go. I know I told you my dad's retiring. He's not going to do what I'm doing, um, but for anybody that maybe is looking for a career change, like as they exit the military, do you have any advice for guys, or maybe just even people that want to stay active as they get out of the military?
I think if you're looking to get into strength and conditioning, I think we're afforded something as veterans when you get out of having the GI Bill. Use it. And, for me, it's like being 30 something when I graduated college. It's one of those like doing an internship. You're an adult, you have bills, you have things going on, got rent to pay. And to do an internship and to go spend the amount of hours that you're going to do for free and the grind that you're going to do, it's like, if I didn't have the GI Bill, I don't know if I could have done it. Like that just wouldn't have been a reality. You get a housing allowance, you get things to help you. I didn't have to worry about those things that I could spend. I can go to be at the field at 4:35 in the morning, start setting up for football, and go through the grind and be at school all day till 7. And do all the morning lifts, hit classes, and then be there in the evening and do whatever that we needed to do at the end of the day. then and then I got to travel with the team. So then I got to travel and all these things. But it's like if I didn't have the GI Bill and the opportunity to kind of go and have my school paid for, have a housing allowance, so I can focus on those things, like use it. Like we have the opportunity to really make those things that, like, for typical person, it's hard to do that. You're gonna be stretched thin to go and, even taking a GA ship somewhere, you're gonna make a limited amount of dollars, and you're trying to live on that somewhere. And it's just one of those things where it's like, so as a veteran, you have these things. Look into it. Look into the GI Bill. Look into voc rehab. Look into all the benefits that the GI Bill gives you, because I think I kind of maximized what I could do to kind of. I even got to go to the CSCCA's paid for by the voc rehab, paid for my flight, paid for my my hotel, paid for food, gave me a stipend every day for food, and it was one of those things where I got to travel with the strength staff, go to the CSCCA's, and I was like, this is pretty awesome. Like, it's like I didn't pay for a thing, and I got to go do this, but it's your time, your service. Sometimes people think like, oh, I'm not deserving. I didn't do it. I didn't do everything. I didn't go to war or whatever. It's like you served, you stepped up, you signed the paperwork. Here are the benefits that you have. Take advantage of them as somebody getting out and utilize them to give yourself that head start or that jump start into your career if that's what you want to do. And not just for strength and conditioning. I think it's for any type of job. You have those opportunities to take internships, and you don't have to worry about working because you're going to get paid for it. So I think that would be the big one takeaway, is just utilize the benefits that we have. There are a lot of them out there. Sometimes they're hard to find, but talk to people. I know I did a lot of research and a lot of calling friends that got out before me and asking, hey man, do you know about this? Like, how do I find this? And they're just like, oh, this is where you go here. And it's like, okay, cool. And I just kind of dug around enough to find my way. And I tried to help. I know when I was getting out of college, I was trying to help the guys, the younger veterans coming in, like, hey man, look at voc rehab, look at these other options. Hey, you can do this with this. Like, and they're like, oh wow, how do you know about that? It's like just digging around, just finding, just scrolling through the, the GI Bill website and everything. And it's just one of those things. But it's like, I think veterans, we have so much afforded to us. It's hard to find sometimes that, but as like, if you're trying to get into a field, whether it's strength and conditioning, if you want to be a lawyer, if you, whatever it is, we have so many things to help us. Take advantage of them. That would be my big pointer, is getting out, because we have it available. Because there's no way I could have done my internship at Hawaii or even gone to Hawaii. I would have been probably at San Diego State, like fighting to get a spot in a very impacted program there, because San Diego State's just so impacted with their kinesiology program to even get an internship. So I think that's the big one. Just take full advantage of your benefits, because we have them. There's a lot of them. There's a lot more than you think there is. When you're getting out doing steps and taps, listen, see what there is, because there's even more now. My wife just went through a taps class or a separations class to kind of start preparing. And the thing she's telling me, I'm like, oh, I never got that. Okay, like all these new things that are coming out. So they're there. Take advantage of them.
Definitely. Yeah, take advantage of them and kind of start a new mission as you're exiting the military and you're kind of starting a new career, whatever it's going to be in. But no, that's great advice. Hey, so like any good training session, we end the show with a finisher. So I got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and maybe overtime for you. So
All right.
you can go rapid fire, or if you want to take your time on any, feel free. But you ready?
Ready.
All right, first one I got for you. Biggest influence in strength and conditioning and favorite athlete growing up.
Biggest influence was Coach Gary Beamer, because he was my first big strength and conditioning one. Really got me into the door, gave me my first big opportunity. Hands down, that's my first favorite athlete growing up. Coach Jackson.
Okay. All right. So when you're not coaching, you're not training, you're outside of either the garage gym or the weight room walls. What are some of your favorite hobbies?
Hobbies, hanging out with the family, playing with the dogs, shooting guns, hunting, anything outdoors.
All right. All right. And if you, since you've already done 2 careers now, if you could choose another one and it can't be either of what you've done, like what would be career 3?
Career 3. Wow. What would I be? Man, I don't think that's ever even crossed my mind to think of. Okay, let me think. If I could be anything, you know what? I'd be a garbage man. Get up early, make decent money, get off early, gone.
You're the first garbage man so far.
So
All
something
right.
different. Actually, my daughter, actually, one of my oldest daughter, said that that's what she wanted to be. And we had this conversation before, so it's funny. So I'll steal her idea.
You would get paid way more than most college strength coaches, I'll tell you that much. Hey,
Yeah, that's true.
so if you're setting up an ideal training day for yourself, what music is playing, or like what's your favorite PR song, and what are you eating after that meal as your post-training meal?
All right. So music, I don't have I'm not like a song guy. I don't have like that it song. Music can change. Like I'll go to Pandora, put on uh, like what stations like POD radio. I'll put on Metallica radio. I'll put on like a rap station, like a Drake or something like that. I just have such a mix. I'll even throw reggae on. I think Hawaii really got into me. I'll throw on some of the green and have something vibing where I'm just lifting. I mean, I could be benching heavy and being like vibing out to reggae, and it's like, oh, yeah, like this is great. So day to day music doesn't really matter what it is. I've had country on. So I'm just like a mixed bag of music, but anything loud, anything up tempo for me. And then post workout meal, give me rice and steak all day. Rice and steak, and I'm good. Some veggies, and a big bowl of that, and I'll be happy.
All right.
Anybody knows me, I'm like steak, steak, steak.
There we go. Hey, so last one I got for you for overtime. What's the most valuable piece of advice you've received?
I'd go back to what I mentioned earlier, as far as the officer that told me every day is a school day. I think that is just being a sponge every day. Try to learn something every day.
I love it. That's great advice. I mean, no matter what profession you're in, that's why I think it's even cooler to talk to you about this stuff too. And whether you're in the military or whether you're a strength coach or you're doing something completely different, like a lot of those lessons are easily transferable. And it's cool because everything that you're easily doing now as a coach, like the Marine Corps prepared you for it. And like, I feel like everything that I did as a coach now is kind of preparing me to be an Army officer as well. So that's awesome. So, hey, Kyle, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today. For anybody that's got any follow-up questions, they want to talk to you a little bit more or see what you have going on, where can they get a hold of you?
You can find me on Instagram, KyleCass83, or no, KyleCass _ sorry. I think that's it. I don't even know my handle, but that's it. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on anything else. You can find me on LinkedIn if you want. Kyle Casillas on LinkedIn. But other than that, yeah, reach out. You got my email. You can post that on there. Feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have everything connected. So if there's an underscore or not, which I always forget about anyway, it'll be on there. But hey, I appreciate you coming on today. Thank you for your service and everything. And we'll definitely stay in touch, Coach.
Yeah, definitely, Nick. Thank you, and thank you for your service, man. Especially joining when you did.
Appreciate it. It's been fun so far. So we'll see where it takes us.
Awesome.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.